Welcome all to my case analysis of Sesame Workshop. My name is Nicole Giles Fullwood, and I am a candidate for a master's degree program in business administration from the Robert Morris University. Today I'll be giving an in-depth analysis of the Sesame Workshop case, a Harvard case study, and this will be a requirement for the summer 2019 course titled Customer Value in the Digital World. In today's presentation, I will be covering a brief history of Sesame Street, significant events for Sesame Street. I will be discussing Sesame Street that Jeff Dunn inherited, Sesame Street historical identity. I will also be discussing the winning strategies or actions that Dunn implemented, in addition to the winning strategies or actions that alter the existing identity. In addition, I will also be discussing the interpretations of Dunn's strategies. And lastly, I'll present a result of Jeff Dunn's leadership strategies. Do these Sesame Street characters look familiar? For me, they sure are, whether it's in the store, on the floors in my house, or on my television. I grew up watching Sesame Street, and my kids are also doing the same. Great educational program. Well, these are a few of the characters that are featured on Sesame Street that has helped Sesame Street to bridge many cultural gaps and educational gaps with fun programs. Big Bird leads a cast of characters teaching children numbers, colors, and alphabets. Let's go a bit into the history of Sesame Street. The first picture you see here is a picture of Joan Gans Cooney, the co-creator of Sesame Street and the co-founder of the children's television workshop, now known as Sesame Workshop. The picture there in the middle is a black and white picture of Big Bird. Actually, this is the debut of Sesame Street back in 1969. And the third picture is the Q1 2015 partnership between Sesame Street and HBO. Let's go back in time for some historical context for Sesame Street. Sesame Street was actually conceived back in 1966 during a discussion that took place between Joan Gans, who we discussed earlier, and Lloyd Morissette, who was the vice president of Carnegie Corporation at the time. Both shared a vision of creating a children's television show that would master, and I quote, the addictive qualities of television, but do something good with them. At that time, there was really little competition for Sesame Street at the time, and 3 years later, they would actually air the first episode of Sesame Street back in November 10th of 1969. 3 years following that, they would expand production into Brazil and Mexico. A year later, they would go all the way to Germany. And in 2016, they had production in 30 countries, reaching children in 150 nations. That's progress. Let's discuss a few very significant events around Sesame Street. While many were appreciative of the mission and vision of Sesame Street, it was quite evident that there was a change taking place. The 1980s saw a significant, steady migration from broadcast TV to pay TV, and an evolution of technology in the digital age. Now, while many companies were implementing changes by being agile to these, the CEO at the time, Gary Nell, he felt confident that despite the decline in revenues that Sesame Street was facing, that if they were to merge into the classroom setting, that they would recover or bounce back from such a setback. These assumptions failed, and that he assumed these were actually incorrect. And later, we saw Sesame Street pull all their investment from such ventures into the classroom. what can be categorized, the time then can be categorized as the evolution of technology in the digital age. As you can see in the pictures here, the first picture was back when you just had your typical broadcast television, more to the now option over to your right, where this is a picture of a TV screen showing multiple applications, giving users the option of streaming TV shows and programs and pretty much anything from multiple platforms. While Sesame Street was still trying to figure out how they would remain competitive, we see competition emerging from top companies such as Disney and Nickelodeon at the time. We continue to see the changes occurring from a technological and digital perspective. Back in 2010, 24% of households' TV were connected to the internet. This number grew in 2013 to be 44%, and 3 years later, in 2016, it grew even more to 65%. Additional notable events taking place was the fact that from a political standpoint, this situation was getting the attention, and the presidential nominee at the time, Mitt Romney, he had threatened to pull PBS's funding. In 2013, just to make matters worse here, there was an internal survey conducted in which the Sesame Street employees just did not feel that they were informed about the operations of the company. And in 2013, in light of all that was taking place, and the fact that the deficit was actually $15 to $18 million deficit facing Sesame Street. This was a result of production costs that pretty much outpaced the revenues, and PBS at the time was only covering a 10% of the production cost. In 2014, Mel Ming retired as CEO, and that is the point where our CEO, Jeffrey Dunn, came on board in September 2019 as the new acting CEO. So what exactly did Jeffrey Dunn inherited in this new role as the CEO of Sesame Street? Well, for one, there was an economic stall into the year 2000, in which the sales of their major themed toys, like the Tickle Me Elmo, I think I still have a version, and even the new characters really just plummeted. There was also a major decline in DVD sales, and this was a significant source of revenue for Sesame Street at the time. Um, there was also major competition. We saw new relatable characters come to the forefront, such as Dora the Explorer or the SpongeBob and the Blue's Clues. And Jeffrey also determined that there was a sense of lack of accountability, that there was an environment that he needed to change, where there was a blame game, pointing fingers, making other business units accountable or responsible for issues, and this needed to be changed. So, but it's important as we're looking into the current culture that we'll go back to the identity here of Sesame Street, and this is critical for Jeffrey as well in his new role. The team there was pretty much tied to the past, and what that means is that they were resistant to change, or at least very slow to change. And this is something that is a function of them operating in functional silos. On a more positive note, Sesame Street, they were still committed to educating children. They've never swayed from that mission and vision. They continue to be a mission-driven organization, which explains why Dunn, even after his partnership with HBO, which we will discuss here momentarily, he decided to keep the relationship with PBS and to still hold that commitment to children to provide education on that platform. It was quite evident to Dunn that a change was needed. So what was his winning strategies? Well, for one, and what was he going to do? What were some of his first moves? For one, communication and collaboration. He stressed this. In the first week of him being CEO, he emailed the top 7 executives of the organization, asking them about themselves, and major issues, how they felt about the company. And their feedback was quite candid. They came back stating that the organization's felt the company was unfocused. They were afraid of taking risks. They were slow to move. They were indecisive. This was the feedback that they provided back to Dunn. He also simplified the organization's mission statement from what read, and I quote, to use the educational power of media to help all children reach their highest potential, down to help kids grow smarter, a simple term, smarter, stronger, and kinder. Dunn made several moves that would alter some of the identity issues that the company had. So, and for one, in Q1 of 2015, he partnered with HBO, which is a paid TV option there. They also joined forces with YouTube to have a digital channel, in addition to IBM Watson, which explored how computers can tailor lessons for preschoolers. They partnered with Windfall to create investment funds, again, going after their nonprofit mission and identity. He really pushed staff to expand their ambitions even further. There was an obvious shift of the company to being more of a media and education company. And he also pulled in very strong leadership to support him that he knew and that he trusted. And in 2015, the reorganization ended those functional silos that have existed for such a long time. Unfortunately, the interpretations of some of Dunn's strategies weren't readily accepted up front or clearly understood. So yes, there were a few departures of some employees. Some of the critics believe that the partnerships were their more commercial plays at the expense of Sesame Street's mission. There were also a bit of confusion regarding what the existing relationship was between PBS and Sesame Street now that HBO was in the picture. Let's review the results of the alteration. Well, for one, the negative perceptions of the company had reduced from 48% to 30%, and this occurred back in 2015. During the 2015 internal survey revealed that 90% of employees finally felt that they were informed about the operations. This is a huge jump from 67% in 2013. Sesame Street was actually now competing, and they were doing so by differentiating. They wanted to lead with education and not to have their program be just a babysitting tool, as they described. Secondly, from a financial standpoint, they were doing really great. The projected EBITDA was $9.9 million back in 2016. The actual EBITDA was $11.9 million. They had embraced the non-for-profit status of the organization, so maintaining the identity there. And even for the PBS audience was growing from what it was previously. So it is quite evident from the results here that Dunn's presence had made a difference, and many may say may have even saved Sesame Street. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. I want to acknowledge the sources that I was able to get context for this presentation. Please review the reference page at the end of this presentation. Thank you very much.